You know, when we take somebody into custody, it's not a game. It's because they've violated a law. There's probable cause to make an arrest.
San Diego's new police chief shuts down an incentive program where cops earn points for drug arrest. Could Qualcomm go private? The company is safe for now from a takeover, but change could be in store for the San Diego chipmaker.
Opera is an increasing step toward your emotional center.
Behind the scenes with the San Diego Opera, a special look at the key player bringing its latest production together. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. The San Diego Police Department is facing criticism after reports of a program to incentivize officers to make drug arrests. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen has more.
The program was first reported by ABC 10 News yesterday. Officers in SDPD's Southern Division received an email on March 9th saying they could earn points for making drug arrests. The officers with the most points would get a special assignment. Police Chief David Nislight told reporters today that the program was unauthorized and was shut down shortly after that email went out.
You know, when we take somebody into custody, it's not a game. It's because they've violated a law. There's probable cause to make an arrest. And so it goes against our community trust. It goes against our relationships. And it just does not meet our values.
Shortly after the chief's press conference, a group of civil rights activists called for an independent investigation into the program. Deputy Public Defender and District Attorney candidate Genevieve Jones-Wright says the email is symptomatic of a cultural problem in the police department.
Someone felt comfortable enough to send an email to 90 officers about an unethical and unjust incentivized program for arrests being made that would target people of color and minorities south of the 8.
Well, Chief Nislight says there is an internal investigation into the program that's ongoing. It's not clear when that will be concluded. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
More than 100 people from San Diego and Imperial counties face deportation after an immigration raid this week.
He's been removed from the country 9 times.
Okay, this guy doesn't have a vehicle.
Our last and final target has multiple VRs and a hit and run.
ICE video shows officers fanning out into neighborhoods. They arrested 115 people over a 3-day enforcement period. ICE officers say at least 50 of those people were convicted criminals. The raid started Tuesday, the same day Air Force One landed in San Diego, when President Trump visited California for the first time since taking office. More than 15 years after the disappearance of a San Diego toddler received national attention, the murder case has ended in a mistrial. The jury told a San Diego judge today they are unable to reach a verdict in the trial of Tyree Jones. Jurors were also deadlocked on a lesser charge of involuntary manslaughter. Jones was the stepfather of 2-year-old Jahi Turner, who disappeared in 2002. The district attorney's office has not announced if it will seek a retrial. There are reports Qualcomm could go private. The Wall Street Journal is reporting director Paul Jacobs may be looking to make an offer to buy the company. KPBS reporter Jade Hyman has more.
Well, just when we thought the dust had settled on Qualcomm for a while, a potential shift seems to have kicked things up again. The Wall Street Journal is reporting director Paul Jacobs may step down after he was stripped of the title of executive chairman last week. The report says he wrote a letter to the board of directors informing them he intends to partner with investment firms to make an offer and buy the company his father Irwin Jacobs co-founded. And we just learned that Jacobs will not be renominated for the Qualcomm board of directors. Last week, President Trump Trump blocked an attempt by Broadcom to buy out the chip maker. Analysts have speculated there could be leadership changes. Board members say they would consider a proposal from Jacobs just like any other proposal. Jade Hindman, KPBS News.
As California's middle class shrank over the last 50 years, income inequality rose as part of our California Dream collaboration. KPBS reporter Amita Sharma sat down with economist Raj Chetty, who studies this widening income gap. They discussed the link between inequality and democracy and how childhood environment is key to boosting economic success. Here's that interview.
I think inequality and poverty in particular are critical issues. They're some of the most important issues of our time that I think affect how Americans across the United States and California in particular feel about society, feel about democracy, feel about where the country is headed. And I think the frustration that you see people expressing around the country is related to the fact not just of income inequality at a given point in time, the fact that there are some people in the country, a relatively small fraction of people who are doing extremely well, say the top 1%, and a large fraction who aren't seeing their fortunes improve as much as in the past. But also, importantly, a lack of opportunity, a feeling that in the past, if I worked hard, I could get ahead and achieve the American dream of moving up. But today, maybe that's not as possible for my children.
So why is upward mobility higher in some California cities than others?
There's a lot of variation in rates of upward mobility, kids' chances of achieving the American dream, if you'd like, across cities in California, across cities in the United States. There are some parts of America where kids' chances of climbing the income ladder are higher than anywhere else in the world. There are other parts of America where your chances of escaping poverty are lower than any place in the world. And so why is that the case? While it's difficult to figure out exactly what the recipe is for success in some place relative to others, we've looked in our research at what factors predict these differences, and we've identified 5 main characteristics of cities that have high levels of upward mobility. The first is that places that are less residentially segregated, where the poor and the rich are living in closer proximity, tend to have higher levels of upward mobility. The second is that places with less income inequality, a larger middle class, tend to have higher levels of upward mobility. The third is that places with more stable family structures, more 2-parent families, for example, tend to have higher levels of social mobility. And the fourth, somewhat related to that, is that places with more social capital. So think of the old adage that it takes a village to raise a child. Will someone else help you out even if you're not doing well? Places that have a lot of social capital tend to have more mobility. And then the fifth, perhaps quite intuitively, is that places with better schools, better elementary schools, better higher education, tend to have higher levels of social mobility.
So overall, how does a person's childhood environment affect his or her economic success as an adult?
So we find that there are profound differences in your chances of climbing the income ladder based on where you grow up and what your environment looks like. In particular, if you look at kids who move to better areas, lower poverty neighborhoods with better schools when they're young, you see that they do dramatically better when they become adults. They're more likely to go to college, they have higher levels of earnings, they're less likely to have teenage pregnancies. And so on a variety of dimensions, childhood environment, quality of schools, but also the neighborhood you're living in, resources, really is central in understanding what drives mobility.
In terms of strategies, how do policymakers, how does government help to resurrect the dream of access to economic opportunity?
I think government can play a huge role precisely because government already plays a big role in trying to foster the American dream. We have a huge set of social programs on which we spend quite a bit of money. I mentioned affordable housing programs as one example. Another big example is support for higher education. I think thinking about how we more effectively design those programs to achieve the goals we intend, and then expanding the programs that are successful in an evidence-driven, data-based way is the path forward.
What made you decide to study income inequality?
My own interest in issues of income inequality really comes from my personal background. I grew up in India, the first part of my childhood, then moved to the United States. My parents came here very much motivated and by searching for the American dream, and just seeing the stark contrast in opportunities myself, it's totally obvious to me that I wouldn't have the opportunities I had today had I not been able to come to the US. I think has really just created a long-standing interest in studying these issues, and I'd like to figure out how to give more kids across the United States and around the world opportunities to succeed.
Professor Chetty, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
That story is part of our statewide California Dream collaboration. You'll find more stories at kpbs.org/dream. Doctors have some competition from barbers in LA, where some customers are seeing lower blood pressure with every visit. AP reporter Krista Fourier has the story.
Mark Sims has been seeing his barber once a week for several years. The 43-year-old says those visits have trimmed more than just his hair. They've also helped him lower his blood pressure.
I didn't know it was a silent killer like it is.
Churches, beauty salons, and other community spots have long been used to reach groups that often have limited access to doctors to promote cancer screenings and other services. Dr. Ronald Victor, a cardiologist at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, wanted to reach black men, a group with high rates of high blood pressure.
On average, the men in our study get their hair cut every 2 weeks by the same barber and do so for over a decade. So I think I'm a pretty nice doctor and have pretty loyal patients, but nothing like that.
Pharmacists worked with 52 barbershops to test and treat about 300 men. At the start of the study, their top pressure number averaged 154. After 6 months, it fell by 27 points for those who saw pharmacists.
For a high blood pressure trial of any kind, this is a very large effect.
The results reported Monday have doctors planning to expand the project to more cities nationwide.
So a lot of the men in the study will work in 2 jobs to make ends meet. For a lot of the men, it'd just be impractical to make, to say, well, I'll come see the doctor 3 weeks from Wednesday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
It takes all of maybe 3 to 5 minutes to take the blood pressure reading. So after I finished my client, I would strap them in the chair or strap the blood pressure cuff on them and give them their blood pressure reading.
Sims says he didn't know he had high blood pressure until his barber convinced him to get it checked. At 175 over 125, Sims was told by a pharmacist that he was at risk of having a stroke.
My barber, he took my blood pressure every week. It constantly went down. This program saved my life. This program motivated me to help myself out and to help others in my community.
When I was twisting his arm to join the program because he didn't want to do it in the first place, I did remind him of his son. And, sometimes it takes that extra kick in the butt.
Only half of Americans with high pressure have it under control, and many don't even know they have the condition. Sims says now that he has lowered his pressure to 125 over 85, he takes his health more seriously and feels as good on the inside as he does on the outside. Krista Fourier, Associated Press, Inglewood, California.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, an exclusive interview with South Korea's foreign minister on trade and direct talks with the North. Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
San Diego Opera opens Florencia in El Amazonas this Saturday. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando goes behind the scenes to find out what role a conductor plays in bringing an opera to life.
Have you ever wondered exactly what an opera conductor does? Well, we found just the person to provide an answer.
I am there to assist my friends in the pit, in this case, the wonderful San Diego Symphony Orchestra.
Joseph Mekovich is conducting San Diego Opera's Florencia on El Amazonas. His work doesn't begin with the musicians, but rather with the singers.
He doesn't even meet the orchestra until probably 3/4 of the way through the piece. So he has a very strong vision of what the singers can do, where they need to breathe. Then he links the orchestra in. I've always said the orchestra score is like the magic carpet, that we put it together, but then we take that ride.
The word magic is especially apt for this opera, which takes its cue from the magical realism of Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Well, to be honest, this idea of magical realism actually comes, that character, that idea is in the orchestra. The orchestra provides the sounds of the forest. You hear birds, you hear the animals of the forest, you hear the movement of the Amazon itself. So that all of that sonic world, the world that is needed to tell the story outside of the words and the singing, comes from the orchestra.
It's a complete soundscape that composer Daniel Catan creates, says director Candace Evans.
Daniel Catan was a man of genius, and he captured emotional world and jungle world, and he writes, I would say, exquisitely for the voice, for the human voice. The way the arc of an emotion enters your body, he's just brilliant at portraying it.
Elaine Alvarez sings the title role of Florencia.
And it was really remarkable to, you sort of hear the Amazon come to life. You hear the thunderstorm, the ship sort of gets shipwrecked for a little while, and it's a very dramatic scene with lightning bolts and everything, and it's all in the orchestra.
Florencia is a famous opera singer who decides to travel down the Amazon to reconnect to her roots and hopefully to find a lost love.
So it's a really romantic story, mystical story. There's magical realism. There's creatures from the Amazon that are the wonderful chorus that we have here. They're dressed up as monkeys and lizards. It's really remarkable.
Alvarez says opera is well suited to conveying magical realism.
Opera exists sort of in this world where it can be very realistic, but it can also use fantasy to sort of amplify these ideas, amplify the human experience.
Evans agrees and adds that magic and illusion always play better in a live venue.
I think the live factor is particularly potent, and opera is an increasing step toward your emotional center. When you add the musical component, it touches us in a way that I think is inexplicable. So it hits the core of the magic childhood part of us.
Journey and transformation are at the heart of this opera, and it's Mekovich's job to make sure those ideas come through.
When anybody comes to the theater, whether it's a movie theater or live theater like this, you're looking to be transformed. And what you want to do is just be sucked into the energy that comes into this incredible room here. The kinetic energy you feel from all the singer-actors on stage, and the scenic elements itself, and the energy from the pit.
And from someone like Mekovich, who adds what he calls his own spice into the mix. A little bit of cayenne pepper to turn up the heat on this trip down the Amazon. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
San Diego Opera's Florencia en el Amazonas opens on Saturday with 3 more performances through March 25th at the San Diego Civic Theater.
President Trump comes to San Diego to see the border wall prototypes. The Fed step in to save Qualcomm from a hostile takeover, and the struggle of realizing the California dream. Join us for the KPBS Roundtable tonight at 8:30.
With wet, cool weather in the forecast, people who are homeless are being invited in off the streets. San Diego is activating its inclement weather shelters. Father Joe's Villages has room for an added 250 people, and Path is adding 30 beds. The Housing Commission activates weather shelter beds when overnight temperatures drop below 50 degrees and there's at least a 40% chance of rain. And those cooler temperatures and steady showers are expected tonight and most of the weekend. Justin Povic has the full forecast.
Talking about more rain over the course of the next 24 hours. Showers moving in later on this evening. A little steadier for the overnight. So we're talking about temperatures just a bit below average, a couple of degrees below average, and some sunshine returning by the time we venture into Sunday. Over the last 6 hours, notice how some of the clouds have moved their way again off to the east, but we're going to see a thickening of the clouds from north to south, from Long Beach toward Oceanside later on, eventually making its move toward Poway and La Jolla as we venture into the overnight hours. Heavy snows over the Sierra Nevada, soaking showers into the Bay Area. Notice how the showers are making their march now toward Los Angeles. And a touch of rain for us here tonight as well as we drop back down into the mid-50s. Again, notice the numbers here. Ramona, mid-40s. Borrego Springs into the low 50s. Mount Laguna, 34. You're going to see the snows come into play late tonight, and especially as we work into the first half of Saturday, where there could be, several inches of snow. But notice how the dip in the jet stream is going to cause precipitation to linger and temperatures stay a bit below normal. Not an all-day rain, but that potential around to San Diego that, we could see 1/10 of an inch, potentially 2/10 of an inch of precipitation. Some spots localized up to 1/4 inch. But notice lighter amounts here off to the north and the east around Borrego Springs, Mount Laguna. There is the snow. Coast extended forecast. Check it out here. The warmth returns along with sunshine as we venture into early week. Back to 70 by the time we venture into Tuesday. Clouds thicken though midweek. Out in advance of another storm system becomes a little stormier down the line. Inland showers to start the weekend, but notice cooling off next couple of days and then bouncing back with sunshine. Mountainous terrain. I mentioned the snow on Saturday. We're back to the sun by early week, and notice desert locations warming up by midweek as well. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Justin Pavic. Back to you, Ebony.
Researchers at Columbia University are studying snowflakes and looking at how they fall and evolve once they settle on the ground. AP reporter Michael Hill says the data could provide clues to the changing climate.
Hunting for snowflakes can be hard. Researchers face stiff winds and deep drifts. Flakes falling from the sky can transform on contact.
They're very tiny, and they're close to the melting point. So as soon as they fall, they will melt.
Marco Tedesco's team from Columbia University's Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory recently headed out into the Catskill Mountains. The snow they study holds secrets they can't see with their naked eyes. They hope this kind of fine-grained data, to be gathered by volunteers next winter, could provide clues to the changing climate and validate satellite weather prediction models. This snow will feed the streams and reservoirs that provide water to New York City. Tedesco says the data could help the city manage its watershed.
It's extremely important for controlling and managing also the water resources for our region.
Tedesco's team is already tracking the evolution of snow from skyfall to snowpack. A drone takes pictures to create a three-dimensional model of the snow's surface. They measure the light the snow reflects back. An infrared camera records the size of snow grains and the layers of snow. And Tedesco captures fresh snowflakes.
They're all beautiful, even the imperfect ones, of course.
The volunteer snowflake hunters following in their frosty footsteps will provide more pictures and measurements to help unlock the mysteries of a winter wonderland. Michael Hill, Associated Press, High Mount, New York.
For more than 25 years, the San Diego Music Awards has honored and celebrated local music. Here to tell us about this year's ceremony is KPBS Arts Calendar editor Ncaa Guerin.
Think of the San Diego Music Awards like a local version of the Grammys, a night where musicians are honored and celebrated, often over many drinks. Over the years, the San Diego Music Awards has featured performances by musicians who have gone on to have national careers, like Jason Mraz, Nickel Creek, and Blink-182.
Please don't say I love you.
In 1994, for example, Jewel performed at this award show before recording her first album, Pieces of You.
My core trembles.
There are dozens of nominees this year, in genres ranging from Best Jazz to Best Live Performer. One group to watch is the Schizophonics, a 1960s-inspired garage rock band led by husband and wife Pat and Letty Beers. The Schizophonics is a fireball of energy, winning over fans with electric live shows. The band is nominated for 3 awards, including Artist of the Year. Every year, the San Diego Music Awards gives out a Lifetime Achievement Award, and this time it goes to the Paladins. The Rockabilly Band has been together since 1980 and was one of the first to play vintage country mixed with blues. The San Diego Music Awards is also a fundraiser for Taylor Guitar's music education program. For KPBS Arts, I'm Ncaa Guerin.
Stay up to date on the San Diego arts scene with the KPBS Arts Calendar and our arts newsletter. Sign up at kpbs.org/newsletter. It's one and done for the Aztecs in the men's Ncaa basketball tournament after losing a nail-biter last night in Kansas. SDSU trailed for much of the game against the University of Houston. They staged a late comeback and had a chance to win, but senior Trey Kells is three-point try fell short, and the Aztecs were eliminated. The men's basketball team put together a 9-game winning streak just to make it into the tournament. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. And finally, we leave you with one more look at the San Diego Opera's latest production. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.